everyone, it's your boy Luke, here for your fades and sleepers for this week's Players Championship. In this video, we'll be covering the most overhyped players going into this week, my fades, and of course some of the diamonds in the rough, people that are being completely overlooked by the masses, my sleeper picks. The goal here is for GPP contests to avoid some of those chalky plays that I don't think end up coming through for a top 10 or top 15. And for the sleepers, some of those low-owned leverage plays that can bring you all the big bucks in these large field tournaments. With that being said, let's go ahead and hop right on into it here for this week. All right, let's go ahead and start off with our fades. And first up, we're going to have Hideki Matsuyama at $9,600. He's somebody who we played last week as a sleeper pick, ended up finishing in the top 20, but I have some real concerns about his health. We saw him grabbing his neck on Saturday and Sunday. His ball striking numbers didn't fall off all that much, but they weren't quite as strong as what we were used to seeing towards the early parts of this year and in that fall swing where he secured a few of those wins. If we take a look at his shots gain metrics, of course, it's going to look pretty solid for Hideki. He's gaining off the tee, gaining on approach, gaining around the green, and of course the flat stick is what carried him to a lot of success. But I'm worried a little bit about the course history, which has been volatile. He had a missed cut here last time out in 2020 when he had that first round lead that got canceled. Of course, got off to a good start in 2019, had the 8th place finish, but also another missed cut there in 2018, and just a 22nd place finish, not all that great there in 2017. So a little bit of a mixed bag for Hideki Matsuyama. If you take a look at the recent form, he is 20th and 39th and an 8th. I mean, the 8th place finish isn't all that bad, but nothing really all that flashy. And overall, with the health concerns, especially with him grabbing the neck so much, on Twitter as well, his caddy did post a picture of him having a lot of cupping procedures done, which is usually a sign of somebody going through rehabilitation, and that's not something that I want to be messing with. I mean, you can see two of our sleeper picks are caddy corded around Hideki here. There's just a lot of core plays I like around this range as well, and people that I will be going to that don't have that type of health concerns and are arguably the same type of plays on paper. Next up, our next fade is going to be Scottie Scheffler, who guesses won his last 2 times out. I understand that it's a glaring misprice there at $9,200, but this is for a large field GBP. We have to be playing the ownership and game theory game. And if we take a look at Scottie Scheffler's course history, I know it's only one start, but he did miss the cut this first time here. The recent form is going to be immaculate. I mean, 2 wins out of his last 3 starts, a win, a 7th, and then a first place finish there at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. The shots gain metrics are favorable for Scottie Scheffler, right? He's gaining off the tee. He's been really good on approach over his last 24 measured rounds. The around the green and the putting has been there. That's why he has 2 wins over that stretch. But if there's one thing that Scottie Scheffler can get into trouble with from time to time, it is that driving accuracy. And this is a golf course with a ton of water in play, a ton of hazards, whether it's not water, it's all those fairways bunkers, pop bunkers, all that sort of fun stuff. And I do think that may bite him in the butt. And pretty much every single year at the Players Championship, there's going to be a handful of guys up top that end up missing the cut. Last year, I believe it was 5 or 6 of the guys priced $9,000 or above ended up missing the cut, and we could see something very similar this time around. So if he ends up being in the 20-25% range in terms of ownership, right now I have him at 18.5%. I think that could be a little bit conservative right there. Would make him an even more clear fade come the end of the week. So for right now, going to be somebody in GBPs that I'm avoiding. It's not really the skill set. Like I said, he has that well-rounded game. I'm a little bit worried about the driving accuracy, but most of all, the ownership he's going to be carrying, especially for somebody who, in his first time here, that was exactly what held him back. That's why he went out there and missed the cut. He couldn't keep the ball in play. Let's go down to our last fade, which is going to be Tyrrell Hatton there at $7,800, coming in at 13.1% projected ownership. He's somebody who had that really nice finish there at the API, ended up almost winning the thing with that great Sunday performance. The issue with Tyrrell Hatton is the course history here is not ideal. If we go down here, take a look at him down here at $7,800, you can see it's a missed cut, missed cut, missed cut. His only time he made the cut was in 2017 where he finished 41st. That's atrocious. He tends to deal with whatever the problem is here making the cut. He's not that accurate off the tee, so maybe like a Scottie Scheffler, he runs into issues in that department. He's also somebody that tends to struggle with the putter. And here at TPC Sawgrass, we have extremely undulating greens that run extremely fast. Might not be nearly as fiery this year with all the rain that's in the forecast, but in either way, I think he's being a little bit overowned, particularly after the end of that tournament. And we take a look at the shots gained metrics, which of course do include all of the rounds at API. He's hardly gaining off the tee, he's losing on approach. Around the green, he's hardly a gainer. And with the flat stick, he's of course gaining a quarter of a stroke, but altogether, that puts him at just a quarter of a stroke gained per round. The guys around him are all head and shoulders better outside of somebody like an Abraham Ancer or a Jason Day. You can go to somebody like a Webb Simpson, Matt Fitzpatrick, up here to Sam Burns, Shane Lowry, of course, guys like Billy Horschel, who's one of my favorite plays on the slate, and just get a much more quality player who's also coming in at the same or even lower ownership. Like guys like a Shane Lowry, Sam Burns coming in at lower ownership. You got to get a little bit more ownership for somebody like a Billy Horschel or a Matt Fitzpatrick, but they're also just head and shoulders better plays on this slate. So the 13% of the field that'll be going to Hatton will not be an investment that I'm making just because a lot of the pivots make some sense to me. Let's go ahead and talk about our sleeper picks now for the week, the guys that are being a little bit overlooked for our GPP contest. The first one I want to talk about is Xander Schauffele at $9,700. The price tag is more than fair. I think he could actually be even a little bit more expensive, and I'd be okay with it. Of course, last year he was everybody's player of the week. I mean, 25-30% ownership pretty much week in and week out. So the fact that I have him projected for 12.2% ownership, this is the lowest ownership projection I think I've had in Xander in at least a year, maybe even a year and a half. I'll have to go back and check on that. Either way, though, it's pretty much the lowest mark you're going to be able to get Xander at a golf course that, in theory, should really fit his game. If we take a look at the course history, it's been extremely volatile. He's somebody who's had missed cuts here, but also had a second-place finish here in 2018. So I think that's why a lot of people are hesitant to go to a Xander Schauffele. If we take a look at the last 24 measured rounds and some of his shots gained metrics, they've been there, right? Gaining in all four major statistical categories. He's gaining at least a quarter of a stroke in pretty much every category, and most significantly off the tee, where he's gaining over a third of a stroke per round. This is a guy who doesn't have a hole in his game. I talked about that at the beginning of the week. At TPC Sawgrass, you're going to be exposed if you have a hole. He's somebody who's also very comfortable moving it left to right and right to left on the golf course. He doesn't have a huge preference for one way or the other. Really just hits the shot that's required. And that's kind of a staple here at TPC Sawgrass, is having the ability to go out and hit the shot that is required from shot to shot. So I like him there at relatively low ownership. I think the price tag's also fair. I think he's somebody that's a much more solid play than somebody like a Dustin Johnson or a Hideki Matsuyama that have question marks of their own. And most notably with Dustin Johnson, if you didn't see my preview early in the week, my course breakdown, he only hits a left to right moving shot, and there are a ton of shots at TPC Sawgrass where you have to be able to hit that right to left moving shot, that draw. And I think that's going to cause Dustin Johnson quite a few problems. Let's move on to our next sleeper pick, which is going to be Cameron Smith. I'm also surprised that he's one of the lower owned players in this range. They're at just 11.9% projected ownership. He's somebody who's been much more solid off the tee than a lot of people were giving him credit for at the beginning of his career. A lot of that comes down to the distance that he's added, but he's also retained the accuracy, which has never been great. But if he's going to be missing fairways, he better at least get it out there 305, 310 yards. And that is exactly what he's done. So if we take a look at the last 24 measured rounds, you'll see he's right around neutral off the tee, which is much better than what he had done in the past. That usually was a category he was leaking strokes in, but still very solid on approach. Around the green in that putter is going to be absolutely magical for Cameron Smith. Altogether, that makes him one of the best players in the field in terms of shots gained total. In fact, that's in the top 3 or 4 in the field. Only Daniel Berger, John Rahm, Victor Hovland, actually he beats Victor Hovland in that category. Only Scottie Scheffler and Hideki Matsuyama. Actually, he gets Hideki as well. Only Scottie Scheffler and John Rahm get him. He's been that good over the last 24 measured rounds, and perhaps the recent form doesn't show that, right? He hasn't played all that much, just the 33rd at the Genesis. At Tournament Champions, obviously ended up winning that golf tournament. Just another solid finish at the Sony Open. Actually, no, he missed the cut there. I think that's also why people are really down on him. But even with all of those performances that are kind of sour, right? The 33rd wasn't all that great. The shots gain metrics have been there. We've seen that, right? He's been somebody who's been gaining like he usually does here on the PGA Tour. So I don't think the course is a perfect course fit. He is somebody that's good with the par 5 scoring, though. It is something that differentiates players here at TPC Sawgrass. Of course, the approach play is the number one key stat that I'm looking at, and he's a lot longer than people are giving him credit for. So because it's going to be so damp this week, the course will be playing a little bit longer than in years past. I think that's going to give him a little bit of extra firepower here. So I like the fact that he's low owned. He's a very high upside play. Of course, if he gets that magical putter working, could very well take this place low. And somebody who is a much better play for me this week than a Hideki Matsuyama, or of course a Scottie Scheffler, that's going to come in at significantly higher ownership. And they come in as similar plays, right? They're both well-rounded players. A little bit better of a short game player for Cameron Smith, a little bit better of a long player, bomber, for somebody like a Scottie Scheffler. But that's not worth a 6-7% difference in ownership, right? I'd much rather take the person that has a similar skill set, but it's just a little bit lower owned. Let's go down to our final sleeper pick, which is going to be Brooks Koepka at $8,600. I can't believe that he's 50 to 1. I've seen him at a few sports books at this point at 50 to 1. I'm going to be hitting that here in the next 30 minutes to an hour. That's just a ridiculous line on him. He isn't coming in with the best form, right? If you take a look at it, I mean, he's had a decent finish there at the Waste Management where he ended up finishing in second place. After that, let's see, 16th at the Honda, miscut at the Genesis, right? He's kind of been hanging around for a while there. Overall, though, this is a major championship-like event, and if he's going to ratchet up his intensity, go out there and really try to perform for once, how the heck is he going to be 50 to 1, right? I know it's on actual majors, so a lot of people are really giving him a pass for that reason, but I'm not going to. This is a guy who, when he wants to go out there and compete in a golf tournament, he's going to go out there and do so. And at the Honda Classic, it's kind of an event that he sleeps on, right? He just shows up there because he's a local, he's able to sleep at home, all that sort of fun stuff. Also, his brother's playing, Chase Koepka. He still finished 16th. That's pretty solid. The Genesis miscut was a little bit concerning, but of course had the third place at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. So just a lot of positives for Brooks Koepka. He gains a ton of strokes on Bermuda grass. If he can go out there, gain a ton of strokes with the approach play this week, you know the off the tee play is going to be one of the best in the world. I really like his upside here, potentially to go out there and win this golf tournament. Like I said, I'm thinking about firing that 50 to 1 bet. Even with the meh stretch of form, right, includes a missed cut, still neutral off the tee, approach play has been there, around the green has been there, and the putter has been there. Of course, when Brooks Koepka is playing his best golf, when he's fully engaged, he's one of the best ball strikers, particularly one of the best off the tee players in the world. So a lot of room for improvement, somebody that I expect to have a really solid week, and you can see coming in at just 8.7% projected ownership. That is all I've got for this week's fades and sleeper picks. Before we go on and get out of here, let me know down in the comments, first off, who your biggest fade is and your biggest sleeper pick on the slate. For me, my biggest fade could be Hideki Matsuyama, but let's go ahead and say Scottie Scheffler just because he's the highest owned player on the slate. And my biggest sleeper pick, Brooks Koepka. I think he's going to come through, have a really solid performance this week. He's going to treat this like the major championship that it really should be and come through for maybe a top 5 finish or even a win. We'll have to see. My outright bet will really hope that he does. But go ahead and let me know what you guys have got down below. We're going to have a live stream tomorrow evening. I'm shooting for 7 p.m. Eastern time. What we're going to do is I'm going to cover everything I saw at the golf course tomorrow. I'm going to be walking it for the practice round. Of course, going over my usual player pool stuff, weather, ownership, your live questions, all of that. So it's going to be like an hour and a half live stream. Might even go live a little bit earlier towards like 6:30. We'll have to see how that all pans out. So look forward to that. I'm going to have you guys covered. We're going to have a report from the course. I'm going to take some videos there, show you guys the rough length, how the greens are rolling. We're going to talk about the weather. Of course, I'll have a good idea since I'll be there. If you're in the Patreon Discord, you'll be able to hear my reports from the course. So like when the rain's starting to come in, the wind, all of that sort of fun stuff. I'll give you guys the inside scoop there as well. So look forward to all of that. Make sure you like the video if you haven't already. Make sure you're subscribed to Gsluke DFS if you aren't as well. That way you don't miss any of the content to come. Of course, the course report, but our prize pick showdown stuff, all of the golf content coming for the rest of this season. Good luck with all of your lineups for this week, guys, and let's get this cash.